It's time for Windows Weekly. Paul Thurrott went to Vegas for CES, and then it rained. We have the latest PCs, including Windows on ARM. We'll talk about Google Assistant, which basically owns CES. And the latest Meltdown and Spectre news. Paul Thurrott and Mary Jo Foley, Windows Weekly, next.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Windows Weekly is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott and Mary Jo Foley, episode 552, recorded Wednesday, January 10th, 2018, CES Blackout. Windows Weekly is brought to you by WordPress. Make WordPress your online home. Plans start at just $4 a month. Go to wordpress.com/windows and get 15% off your brand new website today. It's time for Windows Weekly, the show that drives Paul Thurrott to drink. And
you have no idea how accurate that is. You have no idea.
The show where we cover the latest Microsoft news. Mary Jo Foley, all about Microsoft.com, is here from ZDNet. She's safely ensconced at home where the weather has turned to a balmy 58 degrees or something.
I know.
It's so confusing. It's crazy. Paul, however, a snowbird that he is, has fled to the warmer and wetter climes of Las Vegas.
Yep.
Where there seems to be a little something going on.
Oh, it's beautiful today, but it rained a bunch the past 2 days.
I can remember many a CES and Comdex with rain. That's not unusual.
Can you? I was trying to think if I could, and I couldn't.
Oh, yeah.
I remember snow one time.
Yeah, I remember snow one time, too, yeah.
Well,
it's kind of not the best time of year to visit Vegas.
That's true.
No.
And that's why they picked it for CES.
Yeah.
It's never a good time to
Mary
visit.
Jo, do you have FOMO?
I do not. I am so happy I am not there.
The
No.
one who's missing out is me. I'm missing out on being home.
Fear of missing out. But you get to hang in Brad's hotel room.
It's true.
Where did the Petri organization put you guys up this year?
So last year I booked really late because I was attempting to procrastinate my way out of going to CES.
Oh, I can't get any rooms. There's no flights. Oh, rats.
Yeah, and I was like, sorry, you're going to have to figure it out. So I stayed at the Excalibur, which I cannot recommend enough.
Yikes.
Oh,
if you're a fan of wallpaper that looks like the side of a castle wall, then Excalibur is your place. So this year, we didn't stay there. But this year we stayed at the MGM, which is weeks away from being turned into, I keep forgetting, Brad, do you remember the name? MGM Park, right?
Oh, really?
So, yeah, and this is actually really interesting to me because Vegas is under this continual change thing, which is weird. You come back once a year and you can see everything that changed. And the new stuff is all actually really nice. It's still Vegas, I get that, but MGM Park, which is this new hotel, is beautiful. It's the first time they've taken an existing hotel in Vegas and not just blown it up and started anew. They've torn down big chunks of it and are putting in just like public spaces. There's like parks and benches. Wow. It's really nice. The rooms are nice. It's turned into something kind of cool. I mean, so I was, God help me. I actually said to my wife, we could stay here next week for $69 a night, and there are great restaurants. There's great shows. I mean,
isn't it ironic though that during CES it's like $400 a night?
Try $600.
$600.
Oh man.
Yeah, and I will say this. I mean, the one thing I really like about this place, and I hope this is a new trend here in Vegas, is you don't ever have to see the casino here.
Yeah,
you don't even have to see it at a distance.
You used to have to walk through acres of casino to get to your hotel room.
And one of the nice things about the Bellagio, aside from the cost of it, is that if you walked into the, depending on where your room was, you could avoid the casino, but you could still see it. You could see it from the lobby. It's right there. And in this new hotel, which is still called Monte Carlo, but is about to be changed, you can't even see it. It's not. You wouldn't even know it's there.
Yeah.
Wow.
I like that because people smoke in the casino, and so any opening to the casino is just as a chimney. So it's kind of nice to be able to avoid that area completely.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm looking. Tom Warren just tweeted, all the lights just went out at CES.
Oh,
that's
no.
amazing.
And there's a picture of people in total darkness on the show floor.
Oh, my
So
goodness.
Vegas floods very easily, and there was torrential flooding occurring, and the entire convention center was dripping wet. There was water coming down from everywhere. And Brad took a photo of a multi-power coupling thing sitting there in the water, and it was like, this looks safe. Like, I think I know how it happened. I think water played a role in the outage today.
Holy cow. That is, fortunately, there's apparently a lot of LED flashlights.
Yeah.
So, that's
awesome. Everyone is lighting the way with their iPhones.
That is you never have to worry anymore about blackouts. Everybody's got a smartphone with a flashlight. Isn't that weird? We all have flashlights now.
Yeah.
As if it weren't already hot enough in that hellhole. Can you imagine, when the power went out, the air conditioning went out, as sad as it probably is.
Yeah.
I hope everybody panics and runs for the exits. That would be fun.
Oh, man.
That's mean. That's just mean.
You know what? The scary part is this year I have to go because Microsoft's partner show is going to be in Vegas, sadly. I'm sure Paul may be there as well for that. And I'm just like, no. Every picture I see, I'm like, no.
Listen, I'm doing that thing where I can give advice, but I can't take it. But I like I said to my wife, and I'll say to you, I mean, if you do this the right way, and I, by the way, recommend staying here, and view it as a great place to go out to eat and go to a show or something. I mean, it's all first class. I know it's gross. Vegas is gross. I mean, I will never back away from that. But there is incredible stuff here, and I'm trying to convince myself. But
you're doing a good job.
Father Robert, who is Robert Ballaser, is also at CES. Seems to have uncovered the culprit. It's of course that picture from Airplane.
Yeah, the wrong day to quit amphetamines.
But I do think that there are a lot of. So CES is funny because it used to be you'd see a lot of product debuts and Microsoft would be there. I guess Intel is there this year, but it used to be. Well, especially when it was Comdex, it was really about computers. And then it was about phones, but then Mobile World Congress kind of stole its thunder. So now CES is mostly about, apparently, TVs and voice-activated devices.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. And it's been about TVs for a long time. This car technology is really big here.
Yeah, self-driving cars.
Appliances, right? Aren't like washing machines.
Kohler has a whole automated bathroom with Alexa and everything, which kind of, ironically, is not working right now. And that just kind of underscores the problem with computerizing your bathroom.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm sure I've made this observation before, but the worst thing that ever happened to TVs was that they were made smart and now they boot up.
Yeah.
They don't turn on.
Yeah, they boot and they crash.
Yeah.
So, but I saw Lenovo had some good-looking new laptops. I'm a Lenovo fan.
Right. And we spent some time with those guys last night and looked at all their new stuff. You will be shocked to discover that all of the new X1s are amazing.
Yep.
And I not to be cynical, and I'm not directing this at Lenovo, but I think one of the issues with CES is that it's basically the same thing every year. So the same players do the same thing every year. So we had a laptop. It was really great last year, but now that is a piece of crap. And oh, by the way, there's this new one that's much, much better. And here are the new things. And you kind of feel like you're on a little bit of a treadmill with this stuff. But Lenovo's a great example. I think they've done a great job across the board, frankly. And they're expanding into consumer electronics devices, too, which is the other big trend, I think, for PC makers. We're seeing that with HP and with other companies. The Lenovo stuff is great, like the X1 Carbon, the X1 Yoga, and the new X1 tablet, which is now a 13-inch device, are all, I think they said, computationally identical, essentially, in the sense that they're all 8th-gen quad-core, core processors. They did some nifty things with docking this year. You remember ThinkPad used to have kind of a proprietary one-link dock. What they've done this year, it's pretty cool. They went to USB-C and Thunderbolt 3 a year or two ago, and now they've added what looks like a dock connector. And what it really is a USB-C port with a Thunderbolt 3 capability next to their mini Ethernet whatever. And now they have a dock that plugs into that stuff, and it gives you the old ThinkPad docking experience. And so whether you had the kind that plugged onto the bottom or the kind that clipped onto the side, they're actually selling those devices again for the first time in a couple of years.
But they're not. Are they compatible? No, I'd have to get new ThinkPads.
Right? Yeah, you would have to get a new ThinkPad for it. Yeah, you couldn't use it on last year's model.
Yeah, because this 470 has the that little docking connector on the back.
That's right. So yeah, they can't. So the reason they're going away from that is that requires a certain thickness to the device. So if you have like a T series, it's probably fine, but on an X class, it's just too thin. So it's kind of neat what they did, because the dock has like a floating thing that allows them to mate it to different thickness devices. And so in the future, you probably will see T, L, R, whatever the names are now, devices, and it will work with all of them. So I thought that was kind of cool. If you're a ThinkPad fan and you're thinking about upgrading in the next couple of years, you'll have some exciting, docking capabilities coming.
Dell had, I thought, an interesting solution, kind of a competitor to the Surface.
Yeah. Dell has an all-in-one version of the XPS 15, which is very interesting. And this is off the top of my head, but I think that machine will ship a little later in the year and will have the Radeon graphics chipset.
That new hybrid chip.
Yeah, that looked pretty nice, actually. There's also a rose gold version of the XPS 13, and I think the line from Dell was something along the line of rose gold is the new black, whatever. Okay, maybe. HP had a bunch of new stuff. They have an XPS. I'm sorry, an XPS. Yeah, they have a Spectre X360 15-inch version, which they've had for a couple of years, and the third generation version is coming out soon. That one has the numeric keypad on it now for the first time, which enables easier, Adobe-style shortcut keys and so forth. And the other interesting thing about all these guys, or a lot of these guys, is that we're seeing digital assistant integration into PCs, like not Cortana, right, which we can get to in a little bit. And we're also seeing them release consumer electronics devices that are running off of different assistants, including things like smart speakers, and also from Lenovo and some other companies, the first smart screen devices, which is another kind of cool thing. And again, we were with Lenovo for probably an hour or so, and in some ways, I mean, all the ThinkPad stuff is awesome. Obviously, they have kind of standalone VR headset based on the Daydream stuff from Google, which is excellent. But in some ways, that smart screen thing, which is basically a Google Assistant with a screen, was kind of the coolest one. And it was it's got a rare example of something where I'll come home from a show like this, because my wife couldn't care less about any of this stuff. But I'm going to show her pictures of this thing and say, we're going to want one of these for the kitchen. Like, this is really cool.
Interesting.
So what can you do with it? Like, you can, what kind of things would you say to it?
Well, first of all, just like having the screen allows you to do things like, play videos and play photo slideshows, and but also have kind of like a here's your day kind of screen to sit there. So they have kind of cool today screens and so forth. There are gestures you can do on the screen like you do on a phone, and of course it's voice activated. It's Cortana, or assistant in this case. But one of the big things, because a lot of the use cases for this are kind of kitchen based, is to go through a recipe where you can voice control it step by step. It will do things like, it will say something like, you're putting rosemary in it or whatever it might be. And you'll say, well, how do I prepare the rosemary? And they'll show you a video off of YouTube of how someone cleans rosemary off of the branch or whatever and actually turns it into something.
This is what I like about the Echo Show a lot. And this is basically going to compete with that, I guess, except that it's Google.
Yes, that's right.
In fact, I got the sense from afar, and I'm wondering what you think, that it felt like Google came on strong. They activated 6 million devices at Christmas, which suddenly puts them kind of catching up, frankly, with...
Listen, a year ago, here's the numbers. I mean, a year ago at CES, Google's not here officially, although Google is here, sort of. They're here virtually in a way that's
They wrapped the monorail in half the building.
That's right. The Hey Google is on every available surface. In fact, they asked to pay me to put it on my back. But last year, Google announced exactly 2 devices that were going to run Google Assistant, and they were both Android TV devices that nobody uses, so it was kind of a non-event. Right. This year, there were hundreds of devices. And they released statistics about, the number of actions that are available, which is over 1 million, the thousands of devices and services that they support. This has become a two-horse race. And I think this is the year that Google basically walks away.
It's we predicted it, but it's happening a little sooner than I had thought. And that by the way, now you understand why YouTube doesn't work very well on the Echo Show, because it's going to work great on the Lenovo.
Yeah, I don't approve of that kind of thing, by the way. I mean, I get it. There's a really strong case to be made about shared customers, and even perennial enemies like Google and Microsoft or Apple and Microsoft are waking up to the fact that harming your own users for some competitive edge against another company is maybe not the best approach. I get why they're doing it, but I don't know. It's tough if you're a fan of YouTube, like, to support a company that is artificially limiting your ability to use the service. Is kind of a tough one.
Yeah. I didn't realize they came in two different sizes. I'm looking at Tom Warren's Verge.
Yeah. There's an 8-inch and a 10-inch version.
I like that because the Echo shows 7 inches, so 10 inches would really be that's nice,
that's the one you want in your kitchen. Yeah, $199 and $249.
Really? Holy cow!
Jeez, really?
Oh,
wow.
They're coming on strong. That's very.
And these are not the only ones. This is the first one that was announced, but the truth is there are several of these screen devices that are happening at CES, and the sheer number of places where you can get the assistant. It's again, off the top of my head, I apologize. I'm not going to get everything, but smart TVs and Android TVs, smart headphones, smart speakers, smart displays, in the car. And if you don't, it's basically almost every new car. There are a couple of major exceptions, but most new car models are coming with Android TV and or Apple CarPlay. If you don't have that in your vehicle, there's an Android Auto app you can get on your phone, and you can get it into your car that way. I mean, it's basically everywhere.
So this is a new platform from Google for smart displays. So this Lenovo's one, but everywhere.
That's right.
Everywhere.
Yep.
Oh, boy. Wow.
Yep.
Wow. That's really interesting.
And
did Lenovo say when it's available?
Yeah, July.
No.
I think that was my response too. I said, listen, I need this, and if you turn the other way, I'm going to run the building with it.
Yeah. That's the problem I have always with CES is that you look at stuff and go, okay, I'll take it, and then next Christmas.
That's interesting, and depending on the product you're talking about, some of the stuff actually comes out pretty quick.
PCs
that one was
for sure. Yeah.
PCs. A lot of for example, the X1s that we were just talking about will ship this month.
Right.
So when I heard July on that, I was like, oh, geez, this is the one I want the most, and I want it the quickest.
Right. All right. So that's all of this is kind of interesting. What? HP, Dell. We talked about Lenovo.
Oh, what about the Miix 630?
Oh, the Miix.
What did you think of that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. In fact,
so that's the Windows on ARM Lenovo PC.
Because we all thought this was going to be the Windows on ARM show.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there really wasn't anything except for Lenovo as far as new devices, which surprised me a little bit. It's a good one, and I think the three that we've seen so far are all pretty great. I would say that this one and the HP are the closest to each other in style and maybe the premium quality and so forth. $799. The stats are all kind of the same. It's weird. This is a lot like all the Snapdragon 835 phones we saw last year. I mean, from a specs perspective, we're talking about basically the same thing across the board, right? I will say this: I've complained about the performance of these things, and in using this and also the HP this week again, I was actually really surprised by how well they performed, and I would just say that it's notable. The other thing is, and I've now talked to several people that are trying these devices out and are testing them before they're released. And universally, they all say exactly the same thing, which is astonishing to me because this is not something I really think about that much, which is they kind of complement the standby time. And I've never really considered standby time to be a big deal, but it obviously goes hand in hand with the battery life thing. But this is something to me that the Mac has always done better than Windows at. But the ability to go back to a computer that's been sitting off and have it come on instantly, for one thing, and have it not have lost any battery power over long periods of time. And it plays a major role in your experience based on what other people have told me. Again, I don't have one myself, but it's just weird to me how many times I've heard that. It's the first thing. Like everyone's like, yeah, it gets 20 hours of battery life. But you don't really think about 20 hours of battery life in the sense that what's more impressive is that you're using it over this long period of time. It could be several days. It could be even a couple of weeks, depending on how you use the computer. And you open the computer, you close the computer, you open the, and over time, what you notice, I've been told again, is that the battery's not going down. It's doing things in the background. It's getting your email and your alerts and all that stuff, but it's not killing the battery. And I think this is the major advantage of the ARM style silicon over the Intel style. That they have large cores and small cores, and the small cores work in the background, and they do this stuff very super efficiently. That they have been working ARM collectively, not just Qualcomm, but the entire ARM community, ARM holding, whatever, on these very, very mobile form factors where battery life was the number one consideration the entire time. And so they've been dealing with this thing at a level that Intel just has never approached because they just kind of haven't had to. And I think I think they'll fix Intel in a way. Like I think Qualcomm and ARM entering this market is going to incite Intel to do a better job at that finally. But in the short term, and frankly, given some of the performance issues we're going to have with Intel hardware, which we'll talk about a little later, I think the gap is kind of closed suddenly, between Intel and Qualcomm as far as Windows 10 PCs go, and this could potentially be a big deal.
Yeah, for me, that is like the biggest deal. For me, if you say, what's my number one thing about a laptop that I care about, it's usually, lappability, of course, but then secondarily,
ARM would help with that.
Secondarily, battery, right? And I remember when we first got the Surface Pros to try out, the most annoying thing was you'd shut the thing off, you'd put it in your bag, and you'd be like, okay, I'm not using it for overnight. You take it out, the battery was dead, every time, and it's just
we just go to we just destroy itself.
And you're not always near an outlet, and then you're like, wait, I had half the battery left, and now I have zero. And so I think for normal people who don't think about hey, every night I need to charge this thing, I think it's going to be really great.
This thing was made for you, Mary Jo. It's really interesting because it really
can't wait to try it.
By which I mean really, and that kind of means it's made for everybody. It's like a mainstream thing, there's this combination of factors that makes this really compelling. The silicon itself is smaller and thinner. It doesn't need the cooling that Intel systems require. So the computers can be much thinner and lighter and silent. And when you open them up, they come on. There's no little whatever, and the battery lasts forever. And the standby time is astronomical. It's literally weeks to a month-ish. I mean, it's crazy. And
I'm curious how the battery life will be different if you upgrade to Pro from Windows 10s. How much will it be dinged by doing that? Or if it's a small amount, it won't really matter, right?
What I've been told is that the upgrade itself won't change it at all. What will change it is how many desktop applications you then run, right? It's going to be that mix of things,
Okay.
I was doing battery life tests early last year on just whatever PC, it doesn't matter. And I was talking to the PC maker about it. And they said, this is less battery time than we were seeing. I mean, what are you doing on your computer? And I said, well, I run these apps, and it was like Chrome and Adobe Photoshop Elements. And they were like, whoa, you can't run Adobe Photoshop Elements. And I said, but I do run this app. I'm sorry, but that's real life, But
and the emulation's the other question, how that affects.
Exactly, what kind of a hit that's going to have. So I think for you, it's very interesting because you use a very limited set of apps. Those things are going to run native on that system. And you're going to get something that's thin, light, crazy battery life, silent, instant on. And by the way, that's a very mainstream kind of a usage. I think this is going to help a lot of people.
Me too. I can't wait to try one. I have yet to even put my hands on one, so... Yeah.
No, so I've used it, but I want to actually
keep it over a matter of a month and see, right?
Yeah, I do things, every once in a while. I don't do Visual Studio software development every single day. I obviously dabble in developer stuff, or Android Studio, which is a nightmare. But when I look at my real day-to-day stuff, I do run Adobe Photoshop Elements for graphics, but it doesn't have to be on all the time. It's a couple of Microsoft apps, a couple of basic text editor, email, whatever. I mean, I really don't use that much stuff. I mean, I think I could get away with one of these things as well.
Yeah. I'm excited.
Okay, so is it only the Miix that we're seeing? I mean, are there other?
That was the only new one.
Did you see the Asus? Did you get to try that, the Lenovo Go thing? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you've tried that before, right?
And I don't mean to don't take that the wrong way. I mean, it's actually a fine computer. It's very mainstream, whatever. But there's something about the HP, which is, by the way, they did announce an Intel form at the show as well, and the Lenovo, that are just they're premium looking computers, and they kind of strike at that point in any market that I really like a lot, which is they're not super expensive. I know $800 is a little expensive, but this is a computer you can have for several years. It has the styling of a $1,500 computer, and I don't just mean the look and feel. I mean like the materials, the kind of thinness of it. They both are really high quality. Both of them come with a keyboard cover and a pen, which I think is smart. And I think they seem like really good values to me. I think these things are going to do pretty well.
Interesting. Let's see. IoT.
Yeah, but first let's mention, because this just happened today, although I heard from Mahedi that it partially happened in December, but
Yep.
right now that the Miix 630 is out, more mobile carriers are saying they're going to back Microsoft and Qualcomm's Play. So when they originally announced the list of carriers that were going to support Windows 10 on ARM, it was you had some household names. You had AT&T and British Telecom, Vodafone, Orange, but now today they put out a press release and said we also have Verizon and Sprint and China Mobile all on board too. And I guess Verizon and Sprint had said they were on board when Asus announced, but now that Lenovo's in the mix too, they're getting even more mobile carriers. So pretty much everybody's on board with this thing, which is going to make these also even more interesting. Because people always say, like, what about Verizon? What about Sprint? What about T-Mobile? Now they all are saying they're going to back these things. So that's big also, I think.
The other thing that maybe deserves a mention, and I wrote something about this back when Qualcomm had their event last month, but Intel this week, again, is like, hello, don't forget, we're always connected PC too. And, sure enough, I mean, there are going to be many, many more Intel-based always connected PCs than there will be Qualcomm-based always connected PCs. And they have certain advantages, obviously, including performance. Intel has its own mobile chipsets for modems and connectivity and all that kind of stuff. I think we're going to see better. I'm not sure much better, but better battery life out of the Qualcomm versions. And we're going to see significantly better standby, instant on kind of performance of those systems as well. But there's going to be a lot more choice, I should say, on the Intel side too, and it's important to kind of remember that. I was also somewhat amused by this because there's what Microsoft is calling the always connected PC, and there's no dash in that name, and then Intel is always dash connected PCs, and they include such things as the Google Pixelbook in this definition. I don't think Microsoft would say that the Pixelbook qualifies for this, but I guess the point of that is it has some of those characteristics and has the ability to. I wasn't even aware that this was the case, but apparently it must have the ability to have or it has an eSIM in it and can be used for cellular connectivity.
Oh, well, that's I didn't know that.
the only. I didn't know it either. I mean, but it's in Intel's list.
I don't think that's true. I think that. What it does do, it will auto pair to the Pixel 2. Maybe that's what they're thinking.
Maybe that's what it is. Okay. Yeah.
I don't think it
I was a little confused by that.
An LTE radio in it. That would be a shocker.
Yeah.
I'd be very happy.
You don't have to be a Windows device to be an always connected PC.
What I mean is Microsoft has their brand, and then Intel has been using this term for other things too. And if you look at the way they word them, they're a little differently. Yeah, it's a little confusing. So
that is.
That's not the worst thing to happen until this month, so we'll let that one slide.
True.
We saw some new VR headsets as well. Yeah. Do you want to talk about those?
Yeah, I think the big one is the first standalone Daydream headset. So Google a year plus ago came up with something called Daydream VR. It's a phone-based headset, and so you put the phone into it, you clip it on. There's a little controller. It works really well, except, of course, when you put your phone into a VR mode like that, the battery dies. It gets really hot. Sometimes the phones will literally shut down because they get so hot. And so what this is that system. It's compatible with all the Daydream stuff, YouTube VR and so forth, and whatever games and things that are available. but it's a standalone device with no wires and all that. And I got to tell you, the quality of this is actually really good. And I've always thought Daydream was pretty great, other than the phone requirement. So it's silent on Qualcomm chipset. Again, compatible with all the stuff. It has the same controller that you got with a Daydream VR. But what it has is that capability that Windows Mixed Reality brought to VR on the PC, which is, I forget the exact term, but it's basically situational awareness. In other words, there are cameras on the front of the unit, and it can sense the room. It doesn't do, it can't see couches and things like that. But you basically say, look, I'm going to have a 4 to 6 foot area in every direction, and it will actually fade the image if you try to step beyond it, so that it keeps you in this known safe area. So it's not super sophisticated, but it does eliminate the need for exterior sensors, which is pretty smart. We did this kind of a Blade Runner experience, which of course is 360 degree. You're inside the world of Blade Runner, which is pretty amazing. But they also showed us I guess it was a snowboarding or skiing game or whatever. And I actually got queasy. I had to turn it off. Well, the way you ski is you move your body as if you're skiing, and you can go under trees that are kind of falling across your path, and you can jump up and hit coins and things like you do on a real ski run. But it's you actually move your body to do this, and I was like,
yeah, no kidding. It makes me queasy hearing about it.
Yeah, it was very interesting. And this is a sad theme with the Microsoft stuff, and it's hard because, over years of doing this now, I feel kind of bad. But, this is another excellent example of where the Microsoft efforts in this area are well-intentioned, but this stuff makes more sense in the mobile space. And it's just an area where Microsoft can't make really a dent. And, with the assistant stuff we were talking about earlier, Alexa's all over the place here too, but the Google presence is notable. And regardless of who's number one, who's number two, it doesn't matter. Those are the two big platforms for sure. And this is leading to natural questions about Cortana because, I feel like there's a certain delusional thing going on here with Microsoft and Cortana. There was exactly one Cortana device released in all of last year. And there will probably be exactly one this year too. It's getting a little weird, but maybe that's something... Did you actually? I don't remember. Did you write about this, Mary Jo? I can't remember.
About
the Cortana stuff?
Cortana? Yeah. I wrote about Microsoft saying they're not giving up on Cortana. And when I wrote this piece this week, which was based on their blog post, right? Everybody was criticizing me and saying, how do you believe this? How can you even write this? And I said, you know what? I'm documenting this, right?
I know it says Microsoft.
I'm documenting this to watch what happens now. Because, like you said, there were almost no consumer devices at the show using Cortana. They had that Johnson Controls thermostat, which they had previously announced. They announced a bunch of new reference partners, most of whom I had never even heard of, who make reference designs. Right?
We should discuss this reference design thing because, to be clear, several hundred devices at this show based off of Alexa and Google Assistant.
Yeah.
Microsoft is talking about is 4 or 5 reference designs.
I know. Right. So reference design companies, they're called original design manufacturers or ODMs, right? And what they do is they come up with a reference design and then they shop that around to OEMs and say, hey, you want to build something based on this? So the wins they had were companies like Allwinner, who I had never heard of. I had heard of Synaptics. They were one of them. Tonly, Tonly, another one, never heard of it. Qualcomm was one of them. I guess Qualcomm also has reference designs for smart audio and mesh networking. And so Microsoft had a Cortana deal with them. And then when I contacted Microsoft, I'm like, do you have anybody else, like anything? They gave me a list of other vendors, some of whom I had heard of, like Honeywell. But
read the beginning of the quote because it's not clear.
Okay.
In other words, we'll just read it.
Okay. So they said, in addition to our currently supported home automation partners, we're announcing new partnerships with Ecobee, Genie, Honeywell, Lyric, IFTTT, LIFX, TP-Link, CASA, Honeywell, Total Connect Comfort. Cortana currently supports lights, outlets, switches, and thermostats across all providers.
Here's how I take this quote. Those are not hardware makers making Cortana devices.
Right.
Those are hardware makers that make their own devices that happen to be Cortana compatible.
Yeah, because
Correct.
if this then that, for instance, isn't making any hardware, right?
Yeah, like this is not. What was you had documented? I think. Oh no, you were talking about skills, but Google this week had come out with a, which I don't have in front of me. I apologize. So some crazy number of, 1 million actions, but also the devices that are compatible with their assistant ecosystem. And so let me see if I can bring up this. I can't. That was the wrong link. So never mind. But it was some thousands of manufacturers and many, many thousands of individual devices. And so they just gave you a list of like 8 devices. Like seriously,
there are only 250 Cortana skills or apps right now. Right. Which is a tiny drop in the bucket compared to what there is for Alexa. I don't know how many there are for Google, but it's also like
Google
totally
this week said there were 1 million actions. Now I don't know if they map exactly to skills or whatever, but those are things that Google Assistant can do.
Yeah. I know.
That's a lot.
The
so
third-party
Microsoft
ecosystem's so important, though.
It is.
And
it is.
Google doesn't seem to have a third-party story, as far as I can tell.
Google, or do you mean Microsoft?
Well, neither Microsoft nor Google. Only Amazon has a great. Well, I don't know. You correct me if I'm wrong, but
what do you mean by third-party ecosystem?
Well, Amazon calls them tasks. The ability for I could write an Amazon task.
Oh no, they do actually. You should write. No, that's what these actions. That's what the actions.
That's what the Cortana thing is.
They actually have a dashboard.
Yeah. Google calls skills actions. Is that what it is?
This is the semantic confusion.
I know. Yeah. Okay.
So Leo, if you go to assistant.google.com, if I'm not mistaken, /explore, you will see. I think that's the URL. You'll see what they have, and it's all third-party stuff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and Microsoft's public statement as of this week is, our goal is to put Cortana everywhere you need assistance: PC, phone, Xbox, mixed reality headsets, intelligent home speakers, thermostats, and more in the future. You will see Cortana on your favorite devices and services throughout the year to come. So they're not stepping away from the consumer market in this statement, right?
Well, no. So, I mean, this is another familiar Microsoft story. I really do feel like they're doing what they need to do, right, in a sense. Yeah. They've opened up the platform to third-party developers. They've made it compatible with this Qualcomm IoT platform so that companies that want to can build devices. But you know what? I think what's going to happen is the 2018 holiday season is going to roll around. There will be some smattering of devices at best, and we're going to be holding another funeral. And the issue, I don't know how they fix this. The problem is that they just don't have a base to expand the use of this technology in a meaningful way. And they've got the PC.
The other problem is I don't think they think it's broken.
Oh, it's broken.
I know,
it's absolutely broken.
But remember when they were insisting, look, we've got Cortana on 600 million PCs. We've got a huge ecosystem. Yeah. But how few people talk to their PC still, right?
I think I think we need to almost acknowledge what this thing really is, because Cortana is just a front end to one of Microsoft's greatest treasures, which is those back end services, the Bing for Business type stuff, and that I think is Microsoft's big strength. Their big strength is not front end anything for consumers, like it just isn't. And so
I know
Cortana, I think people are getting a little too worked up over what this thing is, and I really just think it's a front end, and I think it's replaceable. I think it's. I wrote an editorial today, for example, where I said, Windows lets us pick our default web browser or our default email program. Why can't we just pick our default assistant? We would still need access to the Microsoft services in the back end, of course. If I'm going to access my Exchange or Office 365 calendar information, that's where that stuff ultimately is going to come from. That's great. But the front end stuff, there are companies doing much better jobs of that kind of thing. And that's been the case an awful lot, hasn't it? I mean, we've kind of seen this again and again. And so to me, this is Windows Phone all over again. It's Microsoft Band all over again. It's Groove all over again, whatever you want to say. But at least in this case, they still have an important asset, and I think an important role to play in the future, which is going to be being paid by the companies that make these front ends rather than being paid by the individuals that are using the service.
You know, I would agree with you, and I really thought that was the case. Like, I really thought their story about Cortana was going to evolve into Cortana is kind of something hidden under the covers more than it is like the personal assistant that you equate with Alexa and Siri and all. But I thought that until last week when Microsoft dropped an integration they had in a preview with Dynamics 365 and Cortana. And so they just put out like a 3-line blog post saying, hey, we're dropping this. That's it. No answer, no reason, anything else. Just like, we're not doing it now. And so I contacted them, and it took them till 7 p.m. on a Friday, which usually tells you it's bad news, to give me an updated statement. And their updated statement was, you know what, we're still going to integrate Cortana with Dynamics 365. They didn't have a date. They didn't have anything about why they dropped the previous integration. They just said, we are discontinuing the current Cortana integration preview feature. We are focusing on building new long-term intelligent solution experiences, which will include Cortana. Very vague, wishy-washy, no dates, no timing, and opened it up to this idea that there is other long-term intelligent solutions too, right? So I don't know. Like, that makes me wonder about Cortana's role, even as the under the covers piece of this technology.
Well, I mean, I see. Well, I mean, again, I think of Cortana as more of the front end part of it, and
I did too.
We're giving different names to things. It doesn't really matter, but I do really think their back end stuff is important and continues and is viable. Like
their real advantage that they have is in what they're doing with Azure and their big data stuff, cognitive toolkit, all those kinds of things that most people don't think of when you say artificial intelligent agents, right? They automatically think of Cortana, Siri, Alexa, right? So, you know, a lot of people on Wall Street even say, so what do you think about Microsoft not having an AI strategy? I hear that a lot. Yikes. And I'm like, wait, what?
That's depressing.
I'm like, they have a huge AI strategy. It's all the machine learning on the back end, but that's not the part that people think about, right?
We spoke to several PC makers this week about Cortana and this kind of stuff. And off the record, was told the same thing by everybody, which is that nobody uses this technology on their PCs. It has never been a push. People are asking them for Alexa compatibility. Like I said earlier, I think at least 3 of the top 5 PC makers will be shipping Alexa on PCs this year. And not bypassing, you can't really bypass Cortana, but this is like an extra thing because that's what people want. And Brad, or one of us asked someone, I won't say who, but, you know, would you consider, because these guys are also, I should say, making Alexa devices and Google Assistant devices that are not PCs. Brad asked one of them if they would consider making a Cortana device of some kind. And the answer we got was, would you?
It's like the answer you gave is no.
Yikes. No. This is no call for it.
Yeah.
I know. Right. So the problem for them, again, it's also a Microsoft branding problem, right? For a while, they were slapping the word Cortana on everything. Remember Cortana Intelligence Suite? And I remember when they announced that, I'm like,
Windows Cortana.
Yeah.
Does this remind you, though, of Microsoft's mobile strategy that they came late to the game and then fumbled it? And this time you can't blame carriers. I guess you could blame OEMs.
And this time they weren't even late to the game. They were kind of ahead almost, right?
Oh.
I mean,
well, Apple certainly was and failed. So
Siri was first. I mean, on a mainstream kind of phone, built into the system thing. Microsoft followed shortly thereafter.
So
Google
Cortana was in the phones early. That's right. Yeah.
They were.
Yeah, people forget. I mean, because nobody
used it.
Phone. But they did do it. I mean, they saw the importance of it. And I sort of feel like they never really understood what to do with it. And, the real miracle of this market, in a way, is the Alexa kind of Echo device thing. And the
Why
weirdness
did Echo do so well? What was it that Amazon did right that Microsoft did wrong?
I think they fell into this one thing. It's not like they had some computer science genius saying, we're going to talk to the wall. let's figure that out. It was like, we need to sell stuff. How can we make this easier on people? And speaking to something is easier.
Yep. And I think because Amazon didn't have a PC, they didn't fall back on let's just use the PC instead of the phone. When Amazon's phone strategy failed, they had to make something else. And they're like, what are we going to make? How about a speaker?
Something. Right. That's where innovation occurs, by the way, right? It's never going to be the established player who's just trying to milk what they already have. It's going to be when we don't have a position here and we want to play a role, and how do we make that happen? And I still think it's goofy. It came from Amazon. I don't think of them as having any particular prowess in this area. I know they've been making devices for a long time, but come on. I mean, seriously, you're going to hold up like a Kindle HD tablet and claim that this thing approaches in any way the quality of an iPad or whatever? That's ludicrous.
But you know what? I bet it was an easy sell to management at Amazon, because you could say, you know what? Wait till we put ads on this thing.
Well, actually, so I'm a little surprised they're doing ads, because I actually think the real benefit of this is buy more toilet paper. Or I think the real point of it is you're standing in your kitchen and you open the refrigerator or the cabinet and you've run out of something, or you're about to, and you say, go, Amazon, send me some whatever it is. And
but don't forget that advertising is $1 billion business for Amazon. They are an ad company.
Yeah.
So
and there have been a lot of stories lately about them talking to Clorox and talking to this one and that one.
I think they'll do it in a gentle way, though, because that's big risk, right?
Yeah.
It's a huge risk. Imagine if, as part of your one-click purchase process at Amazon.com, you were flashed up an ad that said, hey, we see you're buying some toilet paper. Maybe you'd like some napkins, too. That would infuriate people.
But they do it on the website, and they do it very effectively. And those are ads, remember. Those.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
So, people who bought this, bought that, or.
But the difference is, when you're sitting in front of a computer shopping, you're browsing.
Well,
I mean,
true.
Those kinds of ads are arguably helpful. If you're standing in your kitchen and you say to this device, I want a thing, you're not browsing. You're giving a directive. And I think adding an ad to that process is a huge mistake.
Yeah. But what about if you're cooking, right, and you call for something and then your smart fridge says to you, you don't have any more of that.
Oh, buy some.
Right.
Or you just say, Amazon, give me batteries, and Amazon says, right now it says, well, here's what you bought before. What if they said, well, I got a really good deal on Eveready's? Yeah. That's an ad.
All right, that's
transparent.
Yeah, so that's what I think they had, was like they had the idea, hey, we don't have a successful PC. And also, guess what? We're an advertising company and a commerce company. And so what could we make that would be awesome to help us sell more stuff? This.
Exactly. I think that's the central point of it. I mean, but the interesting thing is, you don't have to be a fan of science fiction to imagine a future where we're talking to these invisible, assistants or whatever, and things are happening, and our schedules being shown to us on the mirror while we're shaving or whatever it is. We all sort of envision that future. So Amazon, going to this from sort of a purely retail standpoint, has jump-started that future. And, in retrospect, it's possible that what happened to, Apple with the iPhone or Apple with the Mac or whatever is going to happen to them in assistance, because that's a fine use for this technology, absolutely. But something that would be much more worthwhile to all of us, I think, are those more broad personal assistant type scenarios. What's my next meeting, and what do I have to do, and what should I wear? Whatever those things might be.
That's
I
where
think that
Google
stuff is
wins, because you're already using Google for all that.
You
stuff.
can't beat Google for that stuff. Yeah.
But you would think that would be Microsoft's place to come in naturally with Cortana too, is all making meetings smarter.
Office stuff.
They're a productivity company, right? So you're like, how about integrating, with what we're doing with the Microsoft Graph and with what we're doing with Active Directory and Delve and maybe Dynamics.
Those are those back-end services. I think what the argument I was trying to make earlier is that they aren't very successful at doing the front-end part of it. They should leave that to other people. They have a great thing to bring to the table, which we all need, which is what you're describing. And it's work, or you might call it education if you're in a school scenario, but it's basically work. It is that thing. What's the schedule? You need to be here now, whatever it might be. All that stuff. It's super important. It's the type of thing that Google doesn't have a lot of insight into right now, because most of their business customers are on the smaller side. It's the type of thing that Amazon doesn't have a lot of insight into, because even though they have a lot of corporate customers, it's not like direct corporate customers. It's not companies using Amazon's email service and Amazon's communication service. It's companies hosting on AWS. It's a completely different thing. So you can make this argument that both those companies need Microsoft, and that the real future. I mean, remember, Microsoft just killed Groove because of Spotify. I mean, why don't you kill Cortana because of Alexa?
I gotta wonder, because I keep wondering what's going on with that Microsoft-Amazon relationship, since they still haven't delivered on the two services talking to each other. My conspiracy mind says Microsoft didn't realize that Google was going to do things like build these apps for PCs and do Alexa for business, and then they were caught short-sighted, or this is part of their agreement and we just haven't seen it all play out yet.
So, right. I think this partnership is inevitable. I think, without really knowing, I would guess that the reason is the initial version of this is going to be really awkward. I think we've talked in the past about some of the convoluted things that I can say to my assistant at home. I'll say, hey, G, play this playlist from Google Play Music on the sunroom speakers. Is a long thing to kind of say, but it works. I mean, it works fine. Yeah. And I think that's how the initial integration between Cortana and Alexa is going to work. I think it's going to be that convoluted. Hey, C, tell A that I want you to blah blah blah, whatever it is. It's just like thinking of that is terrible. And
I know.
When I say Microsoft is a back-end service, the idea is you shouldn't have to think about or care who you're talking to. You just want it to do what you're telling it to do, and that should involve some machinations that you don't need to be aware of, where the front end could be Alexa, or it could be Google Assistant, and the back end could be your Exchange calendar, giving you that very important scheduling information.
Yeah, so I think that is the goal at Microsoft, but I think the way you do that is with Azure and cognitive services and machine learning services, and you don't really need Cortana.
That's my point exactly.
Yeah.
That is exactly my point. Good effort, guys.
Or you just say Cortana is now cognitive services. It's part of the cognitive services toolkit, and it's not a front-end thing anymore.
The only sad part about this whole thing, honestly, is that Cortana is a rare example of a good Microsoft brand. They tend to kill those really cool names. And maybe they should just rename the whole back-end thing to Cortana just to keep it around, because it's such a cool name. But with great roots in Microsoft stuff, it's just a neat thing. But the reality is they just don't do this kind of thing well. I mean, they just don't. And Chris Caposello, when he was on a few weeks back, talking about business customers are people too, and we think of them as the same thing, and and that's great. But I think we're going to be using your back end data. I get it. I might have to use a different service on top of it. It's like I'm going to use the Inbox app. Well, actually, this is a terrible example. I'm going to use the Gmail app on my Android phone maybe to hit my Exchange server, which you can do. It's that kind of interaction is fine. The important thing is you're using Exchange on the back end, or Office 365.
Right. What's going to be interesting is if Microsoft does what you're calling for, which is open Windows up to other assistants, because I could see that being the right thing for customers, and I could see that being the wrong thing for Microsoft.
Well, but again, Microsoft has a rich history of making that decision, right? That kind of decision. They do. But look at Windows 10s,
right? And how you can't use any browser other than Edge. I feel like this is kind of that same thing. It's like they're trying to hold on, like, to the last vestiges of this.
I think I've already gone on record as saying Windows 10s is misguided. This is old Microsoft, not new Microsoft. It's the wrong idea.
But I have to say, everybody else is doing it. You can't play YouTube on your Echo Show either.
Well, that's a very specific service example. One thing you can do on an Android phone is configure it to use Alexa instead of Google Assistant, or to use Cortana.
That's true.
And that's a very...
Not on iPhone, but certainly
no,
on
but
Android,
that's the close. We can't... Apple is always going to be unique that way. I don't know. Look, the issue is this. We talked to Lenovo and HP. We didn't talk to Acer about this. I know they're doing it as well. But, they're going to bundle that Alexa app on there. And it's Alexa. It works as you would expect. Except for one thing. There is this artificial advantage that Cortana gets only on Windows 10 because it's built into the system. And what that lets Microsoft do with it is allow Cortana to work over the lock screen. every PC. So if your computer's locked, you can actually still use Cortana. I mean, you can configure it if you don't want to do that. You could even close the lid of your laptop, and as long as that thing doesn't go into a sleep mode, a deep sleep mode, you can actually use it with the lid closed, right? Those are things you can't do with an app. And when I say app in this context, I'm referring to a desktop application. This is not a store app. Store apps, the capabilities of a store app are so much more constrained than what I've just described. There's this is not the way the system should be architected, right? That capability needs to be open for everyone to use. And you as the user need to be able to choose, just like you can with a web browser or email. Again, same argument as before. I feel like this is so obvious. And
I will be stunned if Microsoft does this. Stunned.
Well, they're not going to do it next week, right? I mean, it's not happening. But I think they get here. And no, I think part of the way you get there is this year goes by, and they've done what they can do to open up the Cortana ecosystem. They've put it on silicon for IoT. They've opened up their Skill SDK to everybody. Anyone can do this. Anyone can build these devices. And if all we get is a couple of cheap Chinese knockoff nothings, if it's not the Logitechs and the Belkins and the, whatever, the major players doing it, then it doesn't matter anymore. It's over. I think it's already over. I mean, I literally think this, the ship has sailed, the horse has left the barn, whatever the phrase you want to use, it's over.
Yeah. I think like you're saying, what you're saying would be the right thing for customers, but I just think if they do this,
I'm always so painfully customer centric.
I know you are, surprisingly, but I feel like it's a slippery slope, because once you start doing this, then it's like, okay, now what's your advantage in terms of building your back-end database that you're getting when people talk to their devices, right?
Let me try a different tact. Amazon and Google are partners of a sort today. I would say Amazon, by putting the Echo, the Alexa application on Windows, there's a partnership there of some kind. I would Google and Microsoft, we're still working on that, but you do get the feeling that those things are calming down, that the animosity between those two companies is calming down. What's more important to Microsoft? That Google put their apps in the store, right? Or that Microsoft prevent them from putting Google Assistant on Windows 10, right? Now, they are choosing the way you are saying that they will choose with the browser, right? I mean, with Windows 10, I mean, they are preventing that today. But ultimately, you need to make this decision. And again, I think this is the thing that Microsoft has a rich history of making this kind of decision. It's what's worse or what's better. Neither one of these things are necessarily ideal for Microsoft as a whole, but which one benefits Microsoft more? I think having Amazon and Google as your partners benefits them more than having a stupid front-end assistant that nobody cares about anyway. It's such a little thing to give up, especially if you go to Amazon and say, guys, how about, here's an idea, put your damn Kindle app in the store and make it good. I mean, if you could get that, I would kiss Cortana away forever.
If Amazon and Google agree to send their data into the Microsoft Graph API as part of this, or somehow build up Microsoft's back-end service, I could see them, using that as the bargaining chip. But if they say no to that, I mean, the reason Microsoft wants voice data is to increase the smarts of things like Bing and its cognitive services, right? Like they want more inputs to make their data better. And if you only let other third-party assistants that don't help you build up your own back-end store work on your system, then you're not really getting that benefit.
That's the thing I don't see happening. And I guess I'll just use the email example again. If you're using the Gmail app on your Android phone, for example, but you're using it to access your Outlook.com or your Exchange, or Office 365 account, whatever it is, you can configure that app for different email. And so maybe you have a personal account that's at gmail.com. Is there any reason for Gmail and Office 365 to share data? Right? The answer is no. What would the benefit be to the other party to providing that information? There is none. I mean, I know emails are more of a privacy issue too, but whatever. I just don't see that happening. But look, the Microsoft Graph is this wonderful thing, and it can feed into any kind of a front end. Right now, the front ends to the Microsoft Graph, as we kind of know it, are Microsoft apps. Yeah, that's all they are. But I mean, I
think the goal is third-party apps too, right?
And I think those apps should be able to pull data from different sources, and they don't necessarily have to give it back. It's not like the GPL or whatever. I mean, they could just take it. But that benefits the user. Again, I know it's kind of a customer-centric thing, but I want to be able to walk up to devices in my home and say, what's next? And that thing that could be next could be on my personal agenda. It could be on my work agenda. They don't have to mix and match behind the scenes as long as I get it,
Yeah. I like your world view of an ideal world.
I am, yes, it's nice in my ivory tower. Yeah.
I wonder if that, though, is really the big use case. I mean, it seems like home automation, playing music, timers, the kinds of...
And those are all the things like, you can't even identify songs anymore using Cortana because once they killed Groove, they took that away from Cortana, right?
The example I always use is the Philips Hue thing, and eventually this will disappear and I won't have this example anymore. But the way things work today is with the Amazon or Google solution, you can control the rooms that you've set up in Hue. With Cortana, you cannot. You can only control individual lights. And I'm sorry, but that's completely unacceptable. So yes, it technically is compatible, but no, it doesn't work as well. So it's not just that there are certain things it doesn't work with at all. Even the examples of things where it does work, it often doesn't work as well as the other solutions do. Google has not yet released this, I don't believe, but Google has this kind of a script type thing coming called routines where you can combine individual actions into a big thing. And that's the, hey, gee, good night. And that might turn on the security cameras, turn on the exterior lights, turn off the interior lights, put on the ambient lighting, turn on the security system, set the alarms, turn the blinds down, whatever. It could be any number of things. And that is a beautiful, beautiful thing. And that's the type of thing that I think makes this a mature platform. It's one of the things. I mean, obviously, the other part of that, I think that's tied to this, is the conversation idea that there's context. When you say, you start a conversation and it knows that you're continuing. You don't have to keep bringing it up as if it were a new thing. I think it's maybe the other big maturation thing that's happening with these systems. But regardless, those are the types of things that are going to happen on the mainstream platforms, Google and Amazon. And will they come to Cortana eventually? Maybe. It's just never going to be. They're just always coming from behind.
Yeah.
Oh, and this is one race where I think it might be over already.
I think it's already over. Yeah, it's over.
Taro Alhonen, who's listening, says, if people don't speak to their PCs now with Cortana, would they speak to them with Google or Alexa?
I never speak to my PC. I speak to my phone a lot. I speak to my watch. And mostly
so that's funny.
To my house.
Two things to this. I think the point of ambient computing is that we stop thinking about where we're doing that, right? That it's an interconnected system and it kind of doesn't matter. So if I happen to be in front of my computer, maybe technically I am speaking to my computer, but I don't know that I'm caring that that's what I'm thinking about.
You don't have to press it. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
That should be part of the point. But, remember, eventually this stuff's going to be built into everything. The light bulbs are going to come with these little speakers or microphones, and it will be, eventually the goal is we don't care. We don't think, it doesn't matter where we are. But actually, as you were saying, his question or his comment, the other big issue with Cortana is language support, right? Locale support. This is an area where Microsoft has consistently let down people. And Cortana is a particularly good example of that. If you live in the United States or don't mind configuring your computer or device or whatever it is to work with English, U.S. English, you're in pretty good shape. But for the other 90 whatever % of the world, you're in terrible shape. And that's another area actually where Google has done a much better job. I can't speak to Amazon. I'm not sure where they're at, but
Amazon's the worst of the bunch.
Oh, really? Yeah.
They really don't have. They just went and just got to Canada. They're not. Really
oh wow!
Look, granted, Canadian English is very difficult, but that's what we hit the middle of the wall. Anyway, but the point is, this is a real area of Google strength, and this is not a small problem to overcome.
It's hard to do.
There's no coming behind in that. If Google supports X number of languages and you don't, it's game.
Plus, maybe if there are more, so many more things you could do, maybe you would talk to it more, right? Like with Cortana, there's not a lot you can do.
That was to my point about the routines. A lot of people say, I don't understand what this is. I'm going to ask Cortana to tell me a joke, or I can ask what the weather is. It's ridiculous. Or, but that's not the point. It's not like these single little commands, although I think we will continue doing those. I mean, the point of this is it turns into a conversation. Also, that it becomes proactive, right? And to Microsoft's credit, I should say that Cortana actually does an okay job of proactive. They do goofy proactive, like, your phone blips in the morning and says, hey, here's what's going on today or whatever. It's just kind of a little agenda thing. But there's also, pretty decent proactive capabilities, I would say, across all of these platforms. And so, part of a conversation is that it's two-way. So it can prompt you, which is useful in some circumstances. Hey, you might want to hop in the car. There's traffic. It's time to get going to your next meeting or whatever. Or that you actually have an interaction that occurs over a period of time where you're actually literally talking to each other. That's a kind of a game changer. I mean,
when you can think of it as an assistant in the machine,
literal
you
sense,
have a relationship with, you have an interaction with. I mean, isn't that where we're going? And I don't think that's that far off.
Listen, I work at home. Mary Jo works at home. I don't know about you, Mary Jo, but I talk to myself all day long. I want to talk to someone else.
I'm lonely. I need a machine.
I talk to my cat all day long.
But that then does open an opportunity, because in my opinion, you will ultimately have a variety of assistants. Amazon's never going to let anybody play Audible books because they own Audible. But I should be able to use my Google Assistant or Cortana to listen to Audible books. What really should happen, and I think this is kind of what Microsoft's Echo integration is all about, is one kind of meta assistant could be Cortana that then handles handoffs to other assistants.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
That's how we want it, right?
That's Mary Jo, that's customer centric. What he just said, that's never going to happen. You live crazy.
That's crazy talk.
That's crazy. You wouldn't want everything to work together.
Microsoft.
That's what they talked about with Alexa, right?
That's your opportunity, Microsoft. Because if you're late to the game, okay, well, there's one more space that needs to be filled, especially because everybody's got these silos.
Well, by the way, so the question there, of course, becomes like, well, how do they make money off of that thing? And the thing I would argue is like, look, if you don't open up your Office 365 customer data, and I don't mean like literally open it up, but I mean allow your own customers to use that data with these other platforms, you're giving them incentive to stop paying you for that service. You don't have to make the money directly off of the assistant. That's stupid. If your thing is not compatible with the thing everyone else is using, that's a disadvantage, and might be enough to get many individuals and some companies to say, maybe we should just use the Google stuff. It works with the assistant, that we want to use, that we're already using, and that we're constrained with our work stuff because Microsoft doesn't make it compatible.
But you know what? If they made Cortana, I mean, where does Microsoft make money? Well, operating system, right? I mean, if they made Cortana do that, and that was the best way to do that, you don't have to choose Echo or Google. Use Cortana and let her handle it. Would be a compelling. That would be good for Microsoft and good for users too. Both.
Yeah.
Right.
The problem is, I think it was Taro's question was, who really wants to talk to their PC or whatever? And that's, by the way, there's a valid point to be made there because
that's the right question. But you made the right answer, which is you're not. You're talking to the air.
Yeah,
to whatever.
That's why you still do it. But when you think about that direct thing, I mean, the truth is, we're a lot more engaged on other devices, and one of the things that is interesting about these home appliances, smart speakers and so forth, is that the people who do use those things are actually pretty engaged with them. There's going to be some segment or some percentage of people buy, a $29 throwaway Echo Dot, and they get the weather for 3 days in a row and they stop using it. But I think there's also this thing that occurs where when these things work, and when they start having those kind of conversational interactions, I think it really becomes personal, and you'll end up using it more and be more engaged with it.
As they get smarter. I mean, right now it's having a conversation with it.
I think the problem for Microsoft is the PC, and it's a terrible thing because it's such a wonderful device for productivity, but people perceive it correctly as work, which is what it is. And the things I would say to my computer are largely negative and can't be repeated in front of small. That's not a positive interaction. Unfortunately, most people.
Well, there is an opportunity though to make something of that too. Remember, which phone is it? I think it's the Android phone. If you shake it angrily, it says, "Oh, something's wrong," and pops up a bug report.
One thing, I say the word seriously a lot, and so if you're listening to the podcast, I apologize. I might have set off your phone or whatever, and because it thinks I'm saying the name of Apple's digital assistant, and I will often, when my phone pipes up like that, imagine a typical Paul Thurrott day. I'm yelling at my computer because I have Tourette's or whatever. Yeah. And something stupid happens in Windows. And so I'm like, seriously? Yeah, no, and then Siri pops up and I'm like, oh, and I yell at Siri and then she goes, you don't have to be mean about it.
I know. Okay, we have something. Can we all agree? Drop the snark. All of these assistants need to just suck it up.
Yeah, it's really my verbal interactions with technology are not positive for the most part. They're usually that kind of a round robin of me by myself in a room yelling at hardware for some reason. It's not good.
That says a lot about Paul Thurrott.
It does. It's a sad existence.
This is an exciting new frontier, though. I really think this is fascinating. I think this is, I mean, I'm not at CES, but would you agree, Paul? This really was the year of the
yes.
assistant.
The speed at which this has come together is astonishing. Like I said earlier, I'm still blown away. I'll never wrap my head around the fact that Amazon started this. Like I can't quite get that happened, but it did. Okay, Charlie Kindle, God love him, whatever. But I don't understand. It's amazing, right? But to watch the industry kind of expand and explode, and it's every time you think you've kind of seen it all. Like I wasn't really around for the PC revolution in the early '80s. I felt like I missed that. I always felt bad about that. And then the internet thing happened. I thought this is great. And then mobile happened. Like, oh my God, this is incredible. And you think like, we must be done, and to watch this happen now, right? It just and because I think when you look PC to internet to mobile to this, the thing that is consistent is the speed at which things change moving forward. It keeps getting faster and faster and faster. It's nuts.
Yeah. That's what we hope for. You wanted to live in the future.
I know, but now that it's happening, it's like, whoa, put on the brakes.
I just think it's fascinating to see how Google's come on strong, and they you can see them. They're going for the jugular. They put on killer mode, and you can just see it.
No, I remember. Google started talking. Well, the first they had this thing. I think it was called Google Now, and they were like, well, we have this new thing called the Assistant. I was like, this is just Google Now. It's the same thing. And then they finally came up with their own appliance. It was like, oh, they're never going to catch up and everything. And I was like, man, these guys, these are like evil scientists. All they care about is math. They can figure this out. This is their
it's
game.
Their sweet spot. It really is.
Yeah, it really is.
By the way, I did look at the Google Assistant skills and how you can write them, and they're just as easy to write as Amazon, maybe even easier. You can put them, So,
it's astonishing.
Yeah, yeah, and they have a great come on for content creators. On the Echo as a podcaster, we use TuneIn, right? That's the partner for
pretty much
Echo.
have to, basically,
right? Yeah. But Google Play already is doing podcasts, so we just have to make sure our RSS feed is fed to Google Play, which it is. And we're in there, and there's no tune-in intermediary. It's just there.
Yep.
So I think they're doing a lot of things right. It's very interesting. Yeah.
Yep.
And you saw a lot of speaking of home automation, did you see the Cortana thermostat? That's pretty sweet.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful. And
it's gorgeous. And that has you tap the screen and it gives you your schedule and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at that thing just as a thermostat, I guess what I would say, compared to like a Nest or something, industrial design is whatever. You like it or you don't. I think it's beautiful.
I'm sure it's really expensive.
Yeah, I think it was $370-ish, somewhere in that.
That's not bad.
Yeah. This is an interesting area because Cortana's failure as a platform, as I see it, maybe doesn't impact this device too much because it's such a very specific kind of device. Like it just does this thing, and you put it on your wall. And if you think about the way you buy appliances or whatever, yeah, it's beautiful looking.
The problem is where it is. I mean, I don't walk over to my thermostat to see what my calendar is.
Well, that's what I'm saying is I would forget that part of it. Like this, if you just think of it as a smart control for temperature, air quality, whatever it does.
Nice, yeah.
It's the type of thing you buy, and if you just use it. You don't really.
It's called the Glass with one S.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like the GLaDOS thing from.
By the way, Paul hasn't suddenly turned into redhead. That's Tom Warren talking about. I'm just using The Verge's video. There's the Nest.
$319 right?
The Nest was expensive when it first came out. Not that expensive.
Yeah, I don't think Cortana integration in that device hurts it. I guess is my point. I mean, as bad as Cortana is in some ways, I think for this type of use, it's fine.
But does it help Cortana particularly, or is this just?
I don't know. It's such a niche device. You know, it's.
Yeah, you're right. And it's really just a thermostat.
But you wonder if Johnson Controls might make other Cortana-based kinds of appliances. Maybe this is the first, right?
Really, honestly, what these things need as an interim solution is just to give you your choice of assistant.
Yeah.
Just like Windows.
And that's the part of the problem.
Look at you, Mr. Idealist.
This isn't co-developed with Microsoft, right? This is just a Cortana. Or is
well, I'm sure Microsoft had some help in it because it also runs underneath Windows 10 IoT.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. So there is a reason for Cortana. I was just thinking that, somebody like that, Johnson Controls, could just say, hey, well, Google won, so see ya.
So Leo would know this. Maybe, I don't know, people listening to this maybe aren't super familiar with this. Google has something called Android. What's it called? What's the Android?
I've heard of that. No, I have. No, you're right.
The IoT. Android things. And I kind of just watch it from afar and I don't quite understand. But the Android things has kind of come into its own here at CES because all these devices that are running the assistant, the appliances or whatever, the speakers, the screens, those are all Android things devices. And so Android things is roughly the equivalent of Windows 10 IoT on the Microsoft side. And, it's another area where I sort of feel like Google is going to explode from out of nowhere. And you're going to see a bunch of these things.
It's pretty clear that's about what's happening.
I mean, the other weird constraint on Windows 10 IoT. There he is again. Windows 10 IoT and Cortana. You have to, if you want to have those two things together, you have to have a device with a screen. Remember that from a year ago as being a requirement. So that's why Harman Kardon runs Linux. It doesn't run Windows 10 IoT.
You're kidding.
Right.
Yeah.
Cortana's on top of Linux in this thing? Oh my!
It not in the thermostat, just in the speaker.
The Invoke.
Yep.
Oh, well, now I like it better. I'm gonna put my Invoke on the mantelpiece because that's Linux, baby.
Yep. It's a pretty.
It is.
Pretty speaker.
It's a pretty speaker. That's all it is. Pretty speaker. If I turn it on, if I tap the head, it gives me facts.
Sound quality is pretty good.
On this day in 1863, Metropolitan Railway opened in England as the world's first subway. Later named the London Underground, its warren of tunnels became more popularly referred to as simply the Tube.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
That's why I don't hit her on the head anymore.
She likes to talk. Thanks for letting the genie out of the bottle.
Okay. I don't know why this is here, but do you want to talk about Dynamics 365 integration?
We already mentioned that.
Okay.
I think the less said about that, the better.
Right,
so the only point on that was Microsoft, we thought their story would be more about productivity, and then they cut their own.
Oh, you did talk about that. Yeah.
Integration. Although, Jeff Fritz is watching, and he said there is an integration with Cortana and Power BI. So that's interesting, right? So you could actually query your data by voice and say, hey, Cortana, let me have all the stats on Windows Weekly for the past two weeks. That's good. That's what you want to see, right? You want to see that. More of that.
Do you think this is a joke? Casey Newton tweeting, I'm here at CES with my family. We're seeing dozens of people having sex in the darkness in the North Hall. What should I tell my children? That's a joke, right?
That sounds like a Cortana joke.
Oh, Lord. Let's take a break.
It is Vegas.
It is Vegas. And while we're breaking, when we come back, we do have to talk about Spectre and Meltdown. This is an ongoing story. In fact, Microsoft's having some trouble with their mitigations, I'm curious what the talk is on the show floor there. I mean, Intel's there.
Seems like they're not talking much about it.
Are they hanging their heads at their booth, or
they should be?
I'm sorry. No, they're saying, "Hey, AMD did it too. Yep. It's not just our fault, man."
Oh boy, Intel's never going to recover from this.
It's worse than. I think it's actually worse than.
It is worse. It's way worse, and we'll get to that.
We'll get to that in a moment. First, let's talk about something happy. WordPress.com is a happy subject for me. I've been using WordPress as a platform. You know, I downloaded it from WordPress.org and put it on my server, which I was spending a lot of money on at SoftLayer, and ran it for a long time. But that was partly because I wanted to know about it, understand it, and I'm a geek and I like to run my own server. Except that I found I was blogging less and twiddling WordPress more. So then I moved to WordPress.com, and this is awesome. They do all the hosting, and at a lot less expensive than my, expensive dedicated host. But they also keep the software up to date. They keep the plugins up to date. They offer great support. They have a huge template library, all the plugins you'd ever want, and they make it as easy as can be. And, I realized there's two ways to go with a website. You could do a website because you want to become an expert in web technologies, or you could do a website because you have a business or a blog and you want, to talk to the world. You want to use it as a platform. If you don't need to become an expert in web technologies, you don't. And unless you really want to do that, my suggestion is WordPress.com. It makes it so easy. You could go there right now and have a blog up and running in minutes. Your business site up and running in minutes. Choose from some hundreds of beautiful templates. You don't have to be a guru. You don't have to even hire somebody to do it. You can get the whole site up and running fast. They do all the technical stuff for you, and they do it kind of without, you don't even have to say anything. Although the very excellent support staff there is always available, 24 hours a day, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, weekends too. I've chatted with them in the middle of the night, and they respond, and they're friendly, and I don't think they're bots. They're like real people. It's great. You can also email them with questions. Plans start as little as $4 a month, and everything's built in. Social sharing is built in, which is great, because if you're a business, the best thing in the world, it's the best feeling when one of your customers shares one of your posts or your site on their Twitter feed or Facebook feed. It just not only boosts your brand, but it just makes you feel good. Built-in search engine optimization means it's easier to find you. And if you're a business and you don't have a web page, you really need to go to WordPress.com right now. WordPress.com/Windows. Because if you go there, you're going to get 15% off any new plan purchase. Even if you already have a site and you want to buy a new site, WordPress.com/Windows, save 15%. Come see why 29% of all the web runs on WordPress, including some of the biggest, best-known publications in the world. It's a great system. And I won't go into the, I won't start saying CSS and templating, and I won't start talking about Windows and AMP and all that stuff, but it's all there too. It's all there too. The best API in the business. It's the best known too. WordPress.com/Windows. 15% off your brand new website. You can see my site, leolaporte.com. I'm really proud of it. I feel good about it. It makes it easy, and I don't pay attention anymore to all the tweaking I had to used to do. I just, when I feel like posting something, I do. And I have it hooked up so it automatically tweets it, and that's just great. WordPress.com/Windows. All right, that's the happy stuff. Now let's talk about Spectre and Meltdown. So my own experience, Microsoft has I'm sure you're aware, there's a PowerShell script.
Yep.
Which is probably, this is for IT professionals.
Yeah.
I don't think this is the final UI they're shooting for this kind of thing.
I tweet. I could show you my tweet on this, but so it's not that user friendly. You download it. You have to run PowerShell. You run it from the command line. They say 2 commands. There's actually 3, so that's confusing. But what you're going to do is you're going to save your execution policy. Because what you're going to do after you save it is open it up so that you can run the script. You'll have downloaded a PSD, a PowerShell script. You import the module, then you run the script, which is called Get Speculation Control Settings. And it tells you what kind of shape you're in.
Right.
And it was actually kind of eye-opening for me because I ran it first without let's put it this way, only having done what I thought was enough on my Lenovo, which was do Microsoft's Windows updates. I thought, I'm good now, right? I ran all the updates.
This is a slightly more complicated process you have to go through because PC makers like Lenovo have historically delivered firmware updates themselves directly to customers using their own software.
And so that's what happened. It turned out I had to do a BIOS update. But this PowerShell script was helpful because it said, well, this is mitigated, this is mitigated. This isn't because you need to do a BIOS update first.
Right.
So that was very helpful. And then I ran it again, and I feel good.
Yeah. Don't get complacent, Leo, because
it's not over.
If this past week has proven us anything, it's that we're never going to save.
Well, on my X1 Yoga Gen 2, I did all the BIOS updates in the Windows, and I'm still not mitigated according to this script. And I'm thinking it's because I don't have that registry key, but yet I am running Defender. So all of this gets very complicated.
And there's no way to know, unfortunately, because the reality is that Lenovo may not have delivered it to that particular model for some reason. It may not be ready.
And I did get pushed a BIOS update, but is it the BIOS update? So end users should not have to run this script. Obviously. No. And that's not the intent. But at the same time, is the update should do the job. And it's very clear many, many, many end users, at least on Windows, will silently run all the updates without any evidence of failure, and yet they won't be protected.
Right. So
that's
the
big.
advice here is, you need to look at the software updating utility that your PC maker provides. HP has something called HP Support Center. Lenovo's got a nice software for that as well. Dell does. I think everybody basically does.
Yeah.
And, just check it periodically. I mean, it should be, HP is the one I'm the most familiar with. You can configure it to automatically download and even install important or recommended updates.
Yeah, but firmware updates, they're careful with because that could brick your system. You have to have it plugged in, and you have to really,
Yeah, you're not going to wake up one morning and be sitting at a BIOS install screen, hopefully. But you yourself should check. I mean, it's important to go and look at this stuff, especially now. The issue here is going to be the longevity of this, because the truth is, and Intel spoke to this, is I think we're going to be seeing updates to this stuff from a variety of sources over a long period of time. And I think there's going to be some eureka moment that happens in the future where the fundamental flaws that are triggered these vulnerabilities, they'll be able to work around, I think, through the magic of software, or whatever you want to say. I think it's a hard computer science problem. I think they're going to solve it to some degree. And the way Intel kind of put that was like, look, we're going to try to mitigate this collectively as an industry. It will get better over time. But I really do feel like it's going to, you're going to want to keep on top of this for a while. It's not going to happen.
Is it sufficient just to keep running updates? The problem is,
well, what else are you going to do?
What else are you going to do? I mean, you're right. You may not. The problem is you may not be mitigated, and you may not know. It may not be fixed, and there's no way to know unless you run this silly PowerShell script.
My wife is very smart, and she continually pushes out updates off to the side of the screen, so she doesn't have to look at them.
No, you told me.
So as a different kind of person, I compulsively check for updates on everything. I'm the type of person that goes to the Windows Store to see if apps are updated. I'll run those PC Maker specific utilities. I will go to Windows Update and watch as yet another Defender thing comes down. So I'm kind of compulsive about it. I don't recommend being like that, although maybe for the short term you might want to be. I think the trick is going to be the complacency thing, because the truth is, I think most people kind of trust the system or don't care or understand how it works, and they're probably not going to be protected. They may do what you did, which is basically run all the updates that are available right now and think, okay, I did what I can do. But like I said, over time, these things are going to come down. And how do you communicate that to an end user? Because we live in a system where there is no way to do that. That we've designed these systems to be as seamless as possible. They're not particularly seamless necessarily, but they are whatever they are. They're just the systems that are in place. And we've never really faced a threat or a set of threats like this. So it's kind of a new world.
I mean, I don't mean to overstate it. But I mean, more than three-quarters of all the Android phones in the world will never be updated, right? I mean, there's just all. I mean, this is a universal problem. Although Microsoft, now I saw this yesterday, has stopped updates for. Is it just for AMD, or is it for all systems? Because the AMD is called blue screens.
Yeah, I think there was
AMD.
So it checks first to see if you're on an AMD.
Yeah, I think the issue there is,
Sorry, didn't they revoke like 9 updates that they had already pushed to AMD? Yeah.
I think so.
And
I think they were
there's
just causing problems on AMD systems.
Then there's the issue with third-party antiviruses, which is that some of them write to the kernel or use kernel calls, and so undocumented, deprecated, or unapproved, or Remember what was Brian Livingston's books? The secrets, Windows secrets,
undocumented Windows or whatever.
Those secret
Windows
things.
secrets.
So it's apparently antiviruses do that, but then even if you fix the antivirus, Microsoft says, "Oh, and by the way, do us a solid and set a registry key to let us know." Like they don't know,
Right?
Yeah.
And then, and I looked at, now this is old, so it was a few days ago, but the list of mitigations, many antiviruses have been fixed, but didn't set the registry key. And again, it'll fail silently. It just won't install.
Like those guys, they'll fix this. I mean, that's something that can be fixed.
It's
your
easy to
antivirus,
fix, but
be updated.
It's kind of a kludgy system.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, leave the mail on the front porch and then put it. I mean, it's crazy. Put a sock on the doorknob to let me know you did, and it's just weird.
Yeah.
Okay, but it's all going to get better. Now, did Intel's they're doing their microcode mitigations, as are AMD and ARM manufacturers, right?
And we get those through the PC makers, right? You're not going to get that directly from Intel for the most part.
Is that firmware update? I guess that could be it.
Well,
right?
it's firmware, chipset, whatever you want to call it. It's all kinds of things. It's for the CPU itself. It's for the supporting chipsets. You're going to get that through that Lenovo software or through whatever you have on your PC.
Yeah. So turn on those updates, from your manufacturer, as well as Windows updates. And
by the way, I'm sure Mary Jo latched onto this as well. But in the Microsoft description of the vulnerabilities, which we'll get to in a bit, there's a lot of information in there. But the thing that as I kind of scanned through it, and you hit on this thing, and it said, "We currently support 45 different editions of Windows."
Yeah.
Holy moly!
Like what the?
By the way,
and to be clear, I think what that means is obviously we have Windows 7, 8X, 10, but we also and then different versions of Windows 10. So now we've reached maybe 7 versions, but every one of those has like a professional, whatever, different editions. I think that's what that means. And so the support matrix for Windows, I mean.
Well, that's where Apple has a huge advantage because it's a homogenous environment. So they've been able to, and they had to do firmware updates too, but they've been able to push those out effectively.
That's amazing.
Across iOS and desktop. Now the other, there's more.
Yeah, there is more.
But wait, there's more. So there are other issues, but I think before we go too much farther, we should probably say that even though this affects almost all modern computers, it probably isn't a huge security flaw. It's more useful for spear phishing or 3-letter agencies to do targeted attacks, because the kind of data this attack gets is pretty random.
The problem is now that it's public.
Everybody will be doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, and they can become sophisticated.
So what if I wrote a virus, though, that affects 1 million computers, and I got it on everybody's computers? I said, here's your flash update, and everybody got impacted. I'm going to get back random data dumps from the processor caches. In fact, by the way, it can also, I think it's one of them, I think it's Spectre, can affect browsers. It could be done in JavaScript. So you could be going to malicious websites.
That's right.
But the stuff you're getting is just kind of
by the way, Leo, you could go to legitimate websites and get it through an ad.
Well, not even ads. One of the things we're also talking about lately is so many websites use libraries in their code, and often somebody posted a post saying, I may or may not have done this, but I created a little library that colorizes code that developers like. They included it in a lot of their code. But what they didn't know was it was also exfiltrating all the forms on the password fields. So it's getting code into a legit website is a lot easier than one might think.
So, obviously it's a security concern. This is a security story, but to me the bigger issue, and I think the thing that will impact more people, is the performance.
Well, that's what I was going to get to. So before we get to that, I wanted to say, probably not time to panic, even if it's not fixed, just because it's hard to do.
You should be running around in your underwear screaming at the top of your lungs right now.
It's hard to do. You'd have to be very sophisticated to write a tool. Somebody will, and then all the script kiddies will have it. But even if they do, what they get is hard to use. You have to know who it came from.
Yeah.
And you have to kind of know what you're looking for in that haystack. You're looking for some very tiny needles. So I think it's really much more useful for a targeted attack. Like if I wanted to get Paul Thurrott and I can get this on your machine, I know what I'm looking at. Paul Thurrott's stuff, and I can say, oh, that looks like a password. That looks like a credit card number.
I would say also just from sort of a security surface, whatever the term is, perspective, the richer target is going to be these cloud computing systems, right? And
they're huge because if you're a malicious actor and you can put a process on a shared processor,
once
you get everything.
you can access the data from all the other tenants on that server, data center, whatever, and that becomes a huge problem. So,
but the good news is that those mitigations are being done by trained professionals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So
you're suggesting that my mother can't handle this.
I'm hoping. I mean, I'm presuming. Although, okay, now let's get to performance because Epic Games, which runs the Fortnite servers, showed. Bad 250. I mean, they showed 2.5 times performance hit with the mitigation that they did. Now, admittedly, these fixes will get better.
But there's also very different advice about what different systems should be doing. Right, you can look at your server workloads and decide to patch them or not, depending on the viability of any kind of attack on the system.
Steve Gibson explained this to me because the leak happens when you context switch from a user-land app into a kernel app and back.
That's right.
And so that means if you're not doing system things like writing to the disk a lot, like if you're just sitting in a word processor, you're probably okay.
Just not patched.
You won't see, well, no, you should patch it, but you won't see the slowdowns. Intel's saying, though, that anything Haswell or older is going to see...
Yeah, so this is the crux of the problem.
Oh, gavolt. Really big slowdowns for the older chips.
The thing that fascinates me about this is when you kind of look at all the data that Microsoft supplied, especially, but also the Intel stuff, it points to this really, it's kind of alarming that it really benefits Microsoft, right? Now, I realize this will also technically benefit Intel in the long run as well, but let's think this through. If you're running an older version of Windows, you're going to have a much bigger performance problem. If you're running an older version of an Intel processor, you're going to have a much bigger performance problem. If you're combining those two things, which a lot of people are, I think we're still in the realm of, I don't know if it's still 2/3, but close to 2/3 of the world is running Windows 7 on probably pre-Skylake hardware. Those are the guys that are hardest hit. This is an interesting thing because this may result in a bonanza PC upgrade cycle that was never going to happen otherwise. Now, this wasn't planned. I want to be clear. This is not a conspiracy theory. But it's interesting because Microsoft has been pushing this notion of upgrading to Windows 10 for all the security benefits and whatever other benefits that Windows 10 brings to the table. And guess what? Suddenly, that has been writ large. It is true. Right now, it is true. And for those people who've been existing on a Windows 7 system and having it work perfectly fine and thinking, I don't never need to upgrade. I mean, maybe you do.
I want to see what it really is because I've seen people kind of misrepresenting what Microsoft said. So here's exactly what they said. They said if you're running Windows 8 or 7 on older silicon, 2015 era PCs with Haswell or older, we expect most users to notice a decrease in system performance. They don't say by how much.
Okay, so...
Well, as Intel said, it's dependent on what you're doing.
Right. And Intel said in their blog post, if you're doing stuff like what I do, you're probably not going to see anything.
Right. You need to be doing system tasks. Interleaving normal tasks with system tasks.
Right.
So I'm at CES this week, and I've spoken to PC makers. I've spoken to Microsoft. Off the record, on the record, however you want to say it. I have been told
on
that
background.
There's a difference.
These slowdowns are significant. They are way worse than what Intel has said.
Oh, dear.
And I've heard that from multiple people.
Oh, God.
And
so you have a 3-year-old computer running a Haswell chip.
Yep.
You're going to go, oh, crap, my whole system's bogged down now.
That's exactly right.
And you're going to need a new system.
I have a Haswell i7 Tower. It's running Windows 10. And so I'm going to be looking at this because I'm really curious to see how that thing fares. In fact, it might be interesting to go back to Windows 7 just to kind of look at that.
I've been using an old Mac laptop because I don't know, like the new crop of laptops. Guess what? It's running a Haswell.
Yeah.
So now I'm worried. I mean, I did the update. I don't notice a slowdown, but maybe I'm not doing that category.
We'll see. I mean, the truth is, people who are good at this kind of thing are going to benchmark it, and we'll get numbers from independent sources. I mean, But I think this is
if
going
you
to
have a program that hits the disk a lot, like let's say a video editor or Photoshop, you're going to see big degradation.
You're going to know.
Windows, like Windows 7, for example. If you're running Windows 7, you're screwed.
I'm running Windows 7, and I bet I don't notice anything. I'm just going to guess.
Because Notepad just sits in memory. You never.
It does. But really,
disk
I
rates
think
might be slower, but that's.
I feel like they're kind of giving us the worst case scenario just to cover their butts.
Yeah, and you could make an argument that the operating system vendor, the company that's selling computers, might benefit if you decided to upgrade. That's fair. That's fair. I don't know. The issue, one of the issues for the PC industry is the slow upgrade cycle. You see that in particular in businesses, obviously. I'm curious to see if this triggers a little bump.
Yeah, I know.
Remember, this July was supposed to be the time frame for the Windows 10 1 billion active devices or whatever. I mean, I
wouldn't buy a new system now. Maybe Intel should come out with a new chip.
So by the way,
that's one of the things a lot of companies are saying is the only true mitigation will be a hardware.
It's a different architecture.
Yeah.
So I don't see them switching, point blank, new thing right away. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised 9th gen we start seeing a shift toward that exact thing. In other words, there's going to be code in the silicon that helps to mitigate these types of attacks, but we move toward a thing that is in fact a new architecture.
I can't pretend to be an expert on this, but according to Steve Gibson, I think, and according to my limited understanding of what Steve Gibson says, which he covered this heavily yesterday on Security Now, it wouldn't be, you could fix this just by limiting the access to that cached code to userland processes. So it wouldn't be a hard thing to fix if you're making a new microarchitecture. I don't know why you couldn't do that in a patch, but it sounds like a new microarchitecture could do it without the performance hit, in other words.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So the performance hit is because you start flushing those caches before you switch contexts. Yeah. You say, well, we better clear out that cache because we're going over to a userland context. We don't want them to see what was in the kernel cache.
Yeah, before we were leaving the cache intact, and so there's no performance.
That's why there was a leak.
Every single time you move it out, you have to flush the cache.
But he says that it's possible to set a bit that just says, look, userland apps can't look into the cache, period. So I mean, in other words, my understanding.
It's almost like you need a secure enclave, like the thing that Qualcomm was talking about last month.
Yeah. I'm like a Labrador Retriever trying to understand God. It's not. That's imperfect in my understanding. That's what I get.
Understand it either.
Yeah.
The most worrisome part about Microsoft's guidance was for server, for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're like, you know what? We're noticing significant performance impacts when you mitigate this. So think twice if you really need to.
That was the workload thing I was talking about earlier. Yeah. In some circumstances, depending on what that server is doing, you may not want to patch the.
I know.
That might be the better
approach. I feel like that everybody ran to write about Haswell and Windows 8 and 7. Of course, that's the bigger group of people affected in the normals, right? But the Windows Server guidance, I was kind of like, okay, that's where it gets dire, right?
Well, think about the way that these systems are built. I mean, if you have a 30% performance hit, which you will, that's like your costs were just raised 30%.
I know.
If you're running that thing yourself, that means you're going to need additional hardware. If you're paying a cloud vendor for it, you're going to have to pay them extra for more capacity.
Meanwhile, let's check back to the show floor at CES. The Nikon booth is still dark, so.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry I'm missing that. I hope that continues. I'm supposed to go back there today.
You didn't miss anything, Paul. It turns out the convention organizers are suggesting people visit the outdoor exhibits today.
Luckily, it's not raining today, right?
Yeah, it's beautiful out today.
Yeah. It's just the central hall. It's not the whole thing. There's nothing big in the central hall, I don't think. It's not too important.
Boy.
There's nothing big in
just
any
the
of
TVs.
Yeah.
Sure. They should be able to light the place by themselves.
There you go.
No kidding.
You see that roll-up TV? Did you go see that?
See, if I was, Philips Hue should fly in there and be like, we're going to solve this problem.
We got Hues everywhere.
Yeah.
Hey, we're getting an Xbox One system update. Woohoo! By the way, the Xbox would also be vulnerable.
Yeah, of course.
So I wonder if this update might have some fixes for that.
Oh, maybe. Yeah. So this is a future coming system update. Mary Jo will be excited to know that because I'm away, I don't really know too much about it. But the one thing I did see is that they're adding a do not disturb mode to the Xbox One, similar to what we have on PC and mobile. And the idea is that you should never have the performance interrupted by a stupid pop-up telling you that someone has left a like on one of your videos or some stupid thing. So that was the one thing I caught in the announcement. But I haven't paid too much attention to it because I'm away, and it's just crazy here. So I'll look at that more closely when I get home.
Good. I think we could profitably go, now that we've covered all of the big stories, to the back of the book.
The two big stories.
The two big, really. Geez, CES.
They're pretty big, though.
Yeah, pretty big.
Yeah. The CES.
Yeah, so I didn't have much in the way of a tip, but in relation to the conversation we were just having, if you were planning on kind of hanging on for a while with your Windows 7 PC, Mary Jo, you might want to start thinking about it. And there's been this. It's really interesting in the Windows 10 context, whether it's Windows 10s or Windows as a service or whatever. I've always bought into the theory, and I find the reality a little harder to swallow. And so, the case of moving from Windows 7 to Windows 10, one of the things you're going to notice is that you get a lot of updates. But the benefit to the Windows 10 system is that you get a lot of updates. You're up to date, and up to date doesn't just mean new features that come twice a year. It means new apps that come every day, or app versions, but also just security updates happening fairly continually. So there's some benefit to it, and I do hope that the kind of lemonade that we could make out of this terrible event is that as an industry we kind of do this upgrade that we should be doing, frankly, and getting onto a more modern platform, and that this type of thing won't be as dangerous or awful if it happens again in the future. Anyway, I don't have a lot to say on this topic now. I'm going to look into writing more about this in the future, but I would start at least thinking about coasting a little less, and maybe it's time to think about a new PC, but that's up to you. So the app pick is something I actually threw on my laptop before I came to CES. I had been playing this on the Xbox One. I didn't realize it was an Xbox Play Anywhere app. I was looking for stuff to install, and I noticed it was available to me, and I thought, that's interesting. It's a platformer called Super Lucky's Tale. It's awesome. I mean, it's great. And the thing that's cool about it is it's a $30 game. You get it from the Microsoft Store. It runs on Windows 10 and on Xbox One, so if you buy it on either digitally, you'll get it on the other. It runs great on basically any kind of PC hardware. It's very much like Cuphead in that way. You don't need a very high-end system to handle this. It works pretty great, and it looks great, and it plays great, and you should play it with an Xbox controller in this case. So I've actually I spent a little bit of time in my little coach seat on the way out playing this game because I couldn't type.
That's such a good way to get seasick. Oh,
yeah. Well, an easier way is to put on a VR headset.
Yeah, you could do that too, because this is was originally a VR, an Oculus Rift VR.
You're right. That's true.
Yeah, you really want to get nauseous. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I'm not gonna.
No, don't do that.
Anyway, it's a great game.
It is. It's fun. I've only played it as a VR game, but
that's
I really
funny.
enjoyed it.
Yeah. I forgot about that.
Yeah. All right, that means time for Mary Jo Foley's Enterprise Pick of the Week.
Yes, my Enterprise pick is something that's going to be in Redstone 4, Windows 10, and it's called Work Folders on Demand File Access. So this is actually already in the most recent Windows 10 Insider build, 17063, or anything later, if anyone has access to things that are later. And what this is almost kind of like placeholders on demand. The on-demand file access feature lets you see and access all of your files. So you control which files are stored on your PC and available offline. It's actually a role inside of Windows Server. That's what work folders are. But this is coming to the next version. The access to it is coming to the next version of Windows 10. So I don't think Microsoft talked a lot about this when they released the last Insider build, but now they're on the Microsoft Storage blog. There's a whole long post about how if you are in a bring your own device scenario, this could be a very interesting feature for you. So that's Enterprise Pick 1.
Pick 2?
Pick 2 is for developers more than pure enterprise people. And this is a link that Scott Hanselman tweeted out the other day that's really a good link. So if you care about .NET, go to www.microsoft.com/net/learn/architecture. If you go to that link, it's a whole site for people who are involved with .NET application architecture, and there's tons of free stuff on here. There's free ebooks and PDFs, and there's a DevOps ebook. There's an architecture ebook. There's code samples. There's stuff about UWP apps, Xamarin mobile apps. It's a very nice collection of stuff all in one place, including a number of free resources that you might want to take advantage of if you're learning about .NET or are a user of .NET.
Nice. Let's have some beer. What do you say?
I say yes.
Are you a lefty?
I am not, but I haven't had a left-hand milk stout in a while. And last week I got to try a beer that was new to me from Left Hand in Colorado. It's called Left Hand Bittersweet Nitro. And so if you know what bittersweet chocolate tastes like, this beer tastes like that.
Ooh, yum.
They call it a coffee imperial milk stout. So you have the taste of coffee, you've got a milk stout. They bring them together, and it's just really smooth and delicious. But warning, 8.9%. So you don't want to just down these, even though you feel like you could. Very, very tasty, very good if you like chocolate and coffee.
Oh, live a little.
I love it that when I went to the page, the whole bottle emptied out. I don't. There's none left.
None left. It was so good you had to guzzle
as
it.
fast as you want to drink that.
I know. Left Hand Bittersweet Nitro. It's good in bottles. I had it on tap. But yeah, it's around. Give it a try.
Yum. I do want to try that. Paul Thurrott, Mary Jo Foley. Paul, I've got bad news for you. Back to the show floor with you.
Well, I'm going to wait until I receive word that the lights are back on.
There's always the North and the South Hall.
Yeah.
But and actually, the car stuff is in the North Hall. It used to be anyway. That's the fun. That's going to be fun over there. And the South Hall's where we always were, next to the butt shaker. I just walked through there. Yeah, the butt shaker subwoofer. After doing that about 4 or 5 times, it was kind of depressingly the same.
Yes.
You'd look out on exactly the same booths, same people.
Anyway, that is a perfect description of CES. Depressingly the same.
Yeah. You want more. You want something fresh and new. So that's why I've pledged to only go every year ending with a 4. And that way it'll always... I
only go years that start in a 1.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Oh, wait a minute. You're safe. You'll have to wait to the 19,000th century or something.
Yeah, I'm good.
Paul Thurrott is at thurrott.com when he's not at CES. He also has books, lots of them, at leanpub.com, but you want to particularly pay attention to the Windows 10 Field Guide. Really nice, really useful. And get the posters while you're
by the way, book's on sale unless something changed, and we have an additional poster. So if you bought the book already, there is a Surface Studio poster now included.
That's the one I want, because I have the Surface Studio.
Yeah.
Mary Jo Foley, you find her at allaboutmicrosoft.com. That's shorthand for her blog on ZDNet. I know Jason Heiner went, Lindsay Turrentine. There were a lot of people.
The whole CNET crew went.
Yeah, CNET has that big booth in the South Hall, and I'm sure they did that. So there'll be lots of coverage on ZDNet from the ZDNet gang, and allaboutmicrosoft.com for your best Windows coverage, day in, day out. Sometimes a little bittersweet nitro influenced, but otherwise.
Mostly only on editing will beer be involved.
That's a little bitterness between friends.
Acer showed a new S7. Oh, they're calling it something else.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but it looked really, really thin. It's like 9 millimeters.
I know what you mean. Yes.
It's something like the C7 it's got some new letter.
Nice.
But, it's cool looking.
It really looks nice. So
you know what I wanted to see was that Razer thing where you put the phone into the
that was
clamshell.
Wild. Yeah. It only works with the Razer phone though.
Yeah.
So gotta buy one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it was kind of a square. That explains why the phone was so square.
Yeah.
It was designed to fit into.
It was fit perfectly.
It becomes your trackpad, right? The phone becomes
so
the trackpad.
Wild. So
I know.
Weird.
Yeah.
That's why we go to CES for that. For that stuff.
It's wacky.
Wacky. We do Windows Weekly every Wednesday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. That would be 1900 UTC. If you want to come by and say hi, watch the show live, twit.tv/live is our 24/7 live feed. You can also join us in the 24/7 chat room. Great people there, irc.twit.tv.
Depressing. That should be the show.
And yeah, we do let the chat room name the show. And I don't know. The geeks suggest depressingly the same. That sounds. I don't think depressing is good SEO.
No, probably not.
Not that we ever care about SEO.
Our Intel security is depressingly different.
Yeah.
You know?
If you want to get the show on demand, twit.tv/WW. All of our shows are at twit.tv, and all of our shows are on every podcast application known to man. So all you have to do is search for them and subscribe, and you'll get it automatically the minute we pump it out. Piping hot, fresh from the oven.
The minute we extrude it.
Yes. It's like the Play-Doh Fun Factory. Yep. We just push the lever and out comes
Eric, there's a podcast.
Weekly.
It's in the same of the star this time.
Have fun at CES. Thanks, Mary Jo. Thanks, Paul. We'll see you next time on Windows Weekly.